I'm not going to lie and say the recorder sounds amazing 100% of the time, but I also think it's really foolish for us to completely write it off just for those reasons.
You're listening to That Music Podcast with Bryson Tarbett, the curriculum designer and educational consultant behind That Music Teacher and the Elementary Music Summit. Each week, Bryson and his guests will dive into the reality of being an elementary music teacher and how music can truly be transformative in the lives of the students you serve. Show notes and resources mentioned in this episode can be found at thatmusicteacher.com.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of That Music Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the recorder of it all. And I want to start off by saying I know that the recorder gets a lot of hate, but I think it is one of the most valuable pieces and tools that we can use in the elementary music classroom. Now, with that being said, I know that it's not everybody's cup of tea. So if you are somebody that is really not into the recorder and you've made a shift of something to still give them an active music making experience with an instrument, like maybe you shifted into ukuleles or ocarinas or whatever, you do you, boo-boo. But what I want to talk about today is those people that feel like there has to be a better way. And we're going to be talking about 5 misconceptions about the recorder in the elementary music classroom. Because again, it's one of my favorite things to teach ever. I've seen students light up that didn't light up for so many other things, so for so long. And to me, that's what makes it important. So let's dive in talking a little bit about the recorder in the elementary music classroom. Last week in episode 208, we talked with Aaron Elliott about how the recorder can get a bad rap and how we can do it instead to make it purposeful, joyful, fun, and something that both students and teachers look forward to. So if you haven't checked out that episode, we will put the link in the description of wherever you're watching or listening now, but you're definitely going to want to check that out, episode 208 with Aaron Elliott. So let's go ahead and talk about these 5 misconceptions and why they're wrong and what to do instead. The first myth I want to get out of the way is that the recorder is taught only to prepare a student for band. And don't get me wrong, I know that if a student ends up moving into band, especially a wind instrument, especially something like clarinet, the recorders, that's going to be super helpful. But I think that's that word only that's really important. I think sometimes we feel like the only reason that we're teaching the recorder is to prepare them for a band program. And the reality is not all of our students will go into a band program. Not all of our students will play a wind instrument. There are some transferable skills for sure if they were to go in for a different instrument family. But what I want us to get at is that the recorder is a valuable instrument in its own right, period, point blank. It's teaching core musical concepts like melody, rhythm, breath control, the perseverance of challenge of working through a challenge, regardless of their future musical path. It is a fantastic tool for general music education because it can take them so many places. I don't know about you, but every time I get my hair cut, I get kind of in the same conversation. Now, on a little aside, I'm one of those crazy people who just walk into a Great Clips and get my hair cut. It's never great, but that gets the job done. So I have these conversations because people don't know me, and they say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I say, "I'm a music teacher." Da, 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 da. And it always turns back to, "Oh, do you teach the recorder?" And there's usually 2 conversations that we can come from this. First, "Oh, my kid just got a recorder. It's so loud." Da, 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 da. Or it's like, "Oh my gosh, I remember when I was in school and I played the recorder. I wasn't very good at it, but I had a lot of fun." Da, 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 da. And that's what I want us to focus on. The reality that we have adults remembering fondly doing that. And that's why I think it's important for us to remember that even though there might be some reasoning behind, learning the recorder in 4th grade to help you in 5th grade band, don't let that be the reason you do it. Let that be an added bonus. So here's an actionable tip. I want you to shift the focus of learning a new instrument to using the recorder as a tool to explore the musical concepts that students already know and that they would be going through anyway, even if you weren't using a recorder. Instead of using a method book, maybe you throw in some folk songs that they've already known, or you use repertoire that students are already familiar with to find that connection between all the music they've done up until this point to the music they're doing with the recorder. On that note, let's move on to myth number 2, which is that the recorder unit must look like a mini band class. And I'm using like all the air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube. Now, first of all, there's nothing wrong with teaching a band class like a band class. Like, and I know that there's so many ways that you can make beginning band active and move in so many different things. But I think that the vast majority of us, if we were to think back about what we observed in undergrad of recorder, was likely they paused what they were doing, all the other stuff that they normally do. They set up chairs, music stands, and they kind of did a method book. They started on one thing, they moved to the, they go through. Maybe they're doing recorder karate. You're learning a song, you're testing a song, you're moving on to the next song, and it's just such a polar opposite to how the rest of the school and rest of the years were going. And I think again, having some structure like this is helpful. It's important for us to remember that when we're using the recorder as a tool rather than shifting gears completely and moving into a specific quote unquote unit, that's where we kind of get ourselves into trouble. This is really cool. One of my things that changed me forever is when I started looking at the recorder not as a separate unit, but as a new way to explore what we're already doing. My first year of teaching, I really struggled with the recorder. I really wanted to do right by it. I knew the students were really excited about it. I just wasn't having a great time. And at the time, I logged into the American Orff Shoulderwork Association's video library that they have as part of the membership. And I knew that there was some recorded stuff in there. So I started looking at it and I started noticing how that approach was so movement based and so explorational and so using the recorder as a tool for all the other things. They're playing games with the recorder. They're doing what we normally do in class with a recorder. And that's what really changed it for me, is realizing I didn't have to teach it one strict, stringent way, thinking, we start here, then we go here, and then we end here. And it really allowed me to change it up a little bit. So here's an actionable tip. I want you to incorporate some movement and maybe some game-based learning into your recorder unit. For example, maybe you're using a singing game that the students already know, and then they're going to learn it on the instruments, and maybe half of them play the game, half of them play the song on the recorder, and then switch. That's a way for us to show that we're just shifting the way we're doing things. We're not completely starting from scratch. Myth number 3 is that every student must master every note before we can move on as a class. And this really leads to frustration from students, both students that are struggling and both students that are really excelling. And it's going to lead to disengagement, which is going to cause classroom management issues, which is going to cause people to be little terrors on the recorder, being loud and overblowing and just making noise because they're bored. And I think this is really important because we need to make sure that we're differentiating our instruction. And I know we have all kinds of conversations about differentiation and what we do or don't know about this. But one thing, like big shift in my teaching, was when I realized that it's okay for some students to be moving on and learning a new note when some students are still working on BAG. It's allowing them that opportunity to progress at their own rate, but also giving them an opportunity for everyone to come together to play together. So for instance, if I have some students that are still in BAG, and then we have some students that are learning, moving on and learning some other notes, all right, cool. When we're doing some group or individual practice, let them practice their trickier songs. Let them practice the songs with more notes. Maybe we add in a high C, and then we can do a little desk camp part. We're going to add 2 parts. And then so students are still using BAG, let them still use BAG on the song. Giving them an opportunity to kind of have their own little journey on the recorder is really, really helpful. So the actionable tip here is having your students level up their practice. For example, maybe you can have one student play the melody if they're still working on some simpler notes, and then have another student who might be a little farther along. Maybe they can add in a second part, or maybe add a rhythmic part, even take the recorder out of it, kind of just give them something new to allow them to be a little bit more in depth if they're feeling a little bit more advanced. But the whole point here is to make sure that students don't feel like they're holding the rest of the class down or have resentment for a student who's struggling, because we're all waiting on them, right? We want to make sure that everyone knows that we're all going to move forward from beginning to the end. We're all going to end in different places, and that's okay. So speaking of the goal, let's talk about myth number 4, which is the goal is the performance. And I think this is something that we we don't do on purpose. But we as music teachers often feel a lot of pressure to have high quality performances. And we unintentionally, a lot of the times, put that pressure on our students. And I always kept it really low stakes. My performances were always, whether they were recorded or not, were always this is kind of how we do things in the music classroom. And it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to show you some of the ways that we do this. And the same thing goes with the recorder. Um, I wanted to show the learning process. I wanted to show how we learned a song by rote. I wanted to show how we learned a song by note. I wanted to show how we could take a song and add a B section where they could improvise, and really show that process rather than the product. One of my all-time teacher big full heart moments. I ended up spending about a week in a hospital a few years back with nasty appendicitis. And I actually missed the fourth grade recorder concert. And it was to the point where I was just like, yeah, I can't be here. Like, it's not happening. I'm admitted in a hospital. And the fourth grade teachers took it upon themselves to make it happen. And I was in my hospital bed. I came out of surgery and I had a video waiting on my phone of the students who had their performance. And they did it without me. And that was a really cool thing because it just showed that they were ready, they were prepared. And it wasn't because I drilled it into them and we had 1,000 practices. It was because the performance we were doing was just what we had, how we've been using the recorder since I gave it to them in January. So an actionable tip here is to just celebrate those small wins. Focus a little less on the performance. The performance is going to happen. Focus more on the process and having fun and enjoying it and giving that intrinsic motivation. And then finally, we have myth number 5, which is that the recorder unit, and I hate the word unit, so bear with me, is just about the instrument. And I think this is where we can lose out on a lot of really cool opportunities. For instance, why do we teach recorders? There's no recorders in band class. So why are we doing it in 4th grade? Let's have that conversation. Let's talk about, the parts in history where the recorder was significantly more popular in, the classical or the performance setting than it is now. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Baroque composers. Let's talk about how there are similar instruments from so many different cultures and parts of the world. Let's talk about that. Use the recorder and the instrument and the process of us doing that to start these conversations. Let the recorder be a gateway to exploring all kinds of other things that relate. And that's really where you can see so much more depth rather than just learning how to play hot cross buns. So I hope I was able to at least bring some light to some of the 5 myths and misconceptions about the recorder in the elementary music classroom. Again, I know that the recorder is not for everyone. I have a sensory disorder. I love the recorder, but I legitimately need to wear earplugs when I'm doing full class instruction because otherwise I won't make it through the day. So I know that it's not for everyone. But what I hope is that regardless of if you use the recorder, so many of these different things can apply to so many different strategies. So same thing with ukulele, or if you're using ocarina, or maybe you're just using glockenspiels or xylophones, or boom markers or whatever. If you're having kind of a focus on a new type of instrument, use that for more than just the face value. Use that as an opportunity to dive deeper into the curriculum, to cover those responding standards, to really get students thinking about how everything connects. And that is really where the magic happens. That's where I noticed I was having a lot more fun. The students were having a lot more fun. And we were all leaving just a little bit lighter than we were when we started. All right, next week in episode 210, we're going to be talking about the parent perspective because that is a whole other thing when you have a recorder and you send it home. So we're going to be talking about that. So be sure to be subscribed if you are not already, wherever you're listening or watching. Be sure you're not going to want to miss this episode. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of That Music Podcast. If you could do us a huge favor and leave us a review or a comment wherever you're watching on YouTube, wherever you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, if you could leave us a review, let us know what you like, give us some stars. we'd love 5. Give us some reviews. Would really be help the podcast grow and get us connected with other music educators just like you who are ready to up level their teaching. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, thank you so much for making a difference in the lives of the students that you teach.